Okay, today we're going to be working on how to start a marker shading drawing. So as you can see, we already have our outline on our paper, we have our pen, we have a value scale, and we're ready to go. Now, the first thing that we want to do is make sure that we have a picture that's good where we can see our light and dark areas, which we have. Okay, so I'm doing stippling on this particular one. I'll talk about a couple other shading techniques, but the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to come over here and I'm going to take the value scale that I have that has hole punched openings and look at this area right here and see what kind of values do I need to develop. So this one's not quite a 2, it's a little darker than that, it's a 3. Right? So when I come over here, I'm going to start my shading and then I'm going to put my value scale over it to make sure it's correct. And I'm going to pay attention to these light areas that I have right here. Now, chickens have soft feathers, and so I want to do stippling on this particular one. So I'm going to take a clean piece of paper to rest my hand on so I'm not smudging ink into my light areas. Also, I always want to start on my main image first and leave my background until I need to do it. And you can see right here, I have some smudges from someone touching my paper with ink on their hands, okay? So I always want to have a piece of scratch paper handy so that I can make sure that I am getting my background, or that I'm keeping my foreground and background images clean and free of any messy marks that may transfer from dirty hand or dirty fingers. Okay, so I'm just gonna come in here and I'm gonna start stippling my area, keeping in mind that I want to develop gradients and a variety of different values to help make this look three-dimensional, okay? If you don't have enough gradients and values, the thing that you are drawing is not gonna look 3D. Okay, and I'm also looking for textures here, right? So we can see this gradient right here is really almost a 5. So I'm gonna come over here and I'm gonna look at that, and the thing that I do is I squint, okay? So I'm gonna squint at it and see if that's a dark enough value, and it is. So from here, this goes from a 5 down to a 4 and into a 3 as we go this way. And so I'm gonna make sure that I have some gradient happening there so that it's going to be doing the same thing. So I'm going to be stippling down into this shape that I made, and I have pencil lines on here, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to shade to my pencil lines, and then this is super important, I'm going to leave my pencil lines alone and not erase them until the next day so that the ink is not just dry on the surface but dry all the way through the paper and won't smudge, because we don't want smudged ink. That will bum us out. Okay, so I'm gonna work all around my areas, get my stippling nice and developed, working on making those things fade. So if you're nervous about your shading skills, stippling's a safe one to pick because your mark making can be a little less precise. And when I'm doing stippling, I'm making sure that I don't make any stippled marks with tails on them. So I'm being very careful and gradual and deliberate with my stippling so that I don't have a whole bunch of dots that have little tails on them. Okay, so as I'm working my way around, right here I have a fuzzy edge on this. Now, how do I make that show without doing a hard outline around the edge bit? Okay, so here's what we're gonna do. I'm gonna come over here and I'm gonna stipple up to that edge, keeping it soft. And then the way to make that edge look blurry is to come in and darken the background. Now, my background's a 4, but that area is a 2. Okay, and so if I want that edge to stand out and show, what I need to do is come in and shade the background a little bit. Now I'm not gonna shade all of it, I'm just gonna do the area that's near this. And so I think that I'm gonna do a little like narrow close cross stitch, or sorry, not cross stitch, cross hatch, so that it's gonna feel like a different texture than my chicken. So I always wanna make sure that I'm paying attention to textures and have my background a different texture. Okay, so the way to make that stand out is not to outline it, but to look at it and say, this is darker, that's lighter. So I'm gonna make this darker so it's gonna show. So I'm gonna come in here and I'm gonna do a little crosshatch pattern that's gonna come right up to that chicken without getting too dark, because I just want it to feel different from the chicken. And that's gonna go all the way across here. And see, like, it's dark, but because it's not the same texture as the rest of it, it's going to feel like a different surface. Okay, so now I have this kind of edge on my chicken without having had to go in and outline it. And this is gonna help my chicken look like it's got like a softer, blurry edge. And so I would continue that around. And I also have the same thing happening with this light area of the beak. Like, that's a 1 right there, right? And then back here, this continues to be a 4. Okay, and so what I'm gonna need to do is come over here and say, I'm keeping that a 1. I'm gonna make this a 4, but I'm not gonna outline my beak. So I'm gonna come over here and I'm going to hatch it in very carefully, because that's an important edge that I want to not look outlined, but still have a sharp corner. Okay, so I'm gonna get that really carefully. And so now look at that, I have a light beak without an outline. Okay, so I'm gonna check this gradient with my value scale and squint. I squint my eyes and say, that's gonna be as close as I can get it to a 4. Okay, and I'm gonna do the same thing up here. I have this really light edge on the comb. And so instead of outlining everything, we're gonna use our shading techniques to make the dark area for that to stand out from. And that's gonna give it a more natural feel, and also gonna make it look more three-dimensional, because we know that things in real life don't have hard outlines. And I'm trying to keep my hatching as tidy as possible. And as I work away from my chicken, I can even do less overlapping of my cross hatching to keep it looking neat and clean. Okay, so I'm gonna keep coming up here, and you can see the effect it gives it. And it starts to pop out once we have enough of the background developed. And so you do have to be kind of patient with that. Okay, and I'm gonna start rotating my paper so that the angle is good for what I need to do with my shading. And like we said, we're gonna leave the pencil lines. We're not gonna mess with them until the ink's had a good full 24 hours to dry, because we don't want to do all of our beautiful shading and then get in there and smudge it. And so I'm even changing the angle of my hatching for the shapes that I need to make. So you have to be patient and careful and go slow. Okay, and so the way we make things look lighter is not by outlining them and then leaving them white, but by shading the things around them darker. And so as I keep going and develop this background, this light area is gonna be even lighter looking. Okay, so I will keep going with that. Now, the next thing I wanna talk about for a minute is doing some different textures. Okay, so my chicken, I want it to be soft, so I have stippling for that. Now let's say I'm doing a bear, okay? And so what you wanna look at when you're doing any animals is the direction that the hair is laying and how long it is. And so for this bear to look shaggy, we need little short lines around the nose, right? And then around the rest of the body, we need longer lines, okay? And so if this is the bear's snout, coming out like this, with the nose, and the nose has kind of an angular shape like this, right? And we have the actual nose inside of that shaded area. like this, and the snout comes around, and bottom up jaw like that. Okay, and it's gonna come up like this with this area. And so this is a light area with really short fur. We have eyes here, okay? And then we have kind of chubby face. Bears are known for being nice and big and fat, especially as they're coming into hibernation season where they're packing on all their weight.